Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of The New World. And in today's video, with the upcoming start to the preseason games, we discuss the timeline of the newly drafted Browns quarterback, Shedeur Sanders, after getting a starting nod due to the injuries of both Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Now, this video will be recorded before the game, so this will be predictions. But we dive into how Shedeur has been utilized during training camp, as it has left some of us on the channel in question, and that is what leads us in today's video. But before we go any further, make sure to hit that subscribe button and help us on the road to 10K subs. Hit that like button if you enjoy, and make sure to share the video as well. And comment if you think Shedeur has been treated fairly throughout this offseason. Now Bardo, after watching some of the stats, reps, and information given by media members, as well as the comments made by the owner of the franchise, do you believe Shedeur has been treated fairly throughout this offseason training camp? And what are you expecting from him come this Friday, as he will get the starting spot in their first preseason game that has confirmed he will get a great amount of reps?
I have a few problems with this conversation. Number one being fairness. Ladies and gentlemen, what does that mean? Fair is a place where they judge pigs. So when people are talking about fairness, are they talking about fairness from the standpoint of it's a lot of Shedeur fanboys out here that have been following his career really since Colorado? Because a lot of people, if we're going to be honest, we're not talking about Shedeur Sanders when he was at Jackson State. So all of you latecomers that want to dick rod Shedeur Sanders because his dad is Deion Sanders, those are probably the ones that are saying that this situation is not fair. Now, we'll say this, just based on the limited, very, very limited, because I do want to preface that all of these people that are saying Shedeur Sanders should be quarterback one because of look at his passing numbers, look at his stats, look at some of these reps. We are seeing very, very, very limited data, limited action about these guys. I don't think that you can say that somebody is better than the other specifically off of completions. I don't think that that's really right. We need more data than that. Now, what I will say is I think that what Shedeur Sanders has done is what he's supposed to do, which is go into work, put your head down, and make the most out of every situation that is out there for you. I think that he has done that well. Now, if you want to say, has he done that better than Dillon Gabriel? Based on the stats, yes. But my thing is people are picking and choosing what information they want to rely upon, because I've seen pretty much every single day of training camp, these stats come out about these completions, and Shedeur Sanders is completing a lot of passes. He may have a touchdown or two, maybe 7 on 7, maybe 11 on 11. I think the most impressive thing from what I've heard is that from NFL players, ex-NFL players, they are stating that Shedeur Sanders most likely is seeing the first unit defense, even though he's with the second unit. I think that that's pretty prevalent. But some of the things that we cannot deny, what I like to pay attention to, is not just the statistical output, because completions is not enough for me to just look at the stats and just say, oh, this guy's better than the other. But what are some of the Cleveland Browns insiders that are out there every single day? What are they saying about the situation? What are some of these team reporters saying about the situation? Now, I've seen from a few articles. Let's go to the US Sun, because I just want people to pay attention to all of the information that is out there. An article from Keelan Hughes, digital sports reporter, about Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders has received a brutal update as he bids to become the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback. The QB was a surprising 5th round pick in the NFL draft this year, with the Browns picking another quarterback, Dillon Gabriel, ahead of him. Despite that, Sanders has made a good start to life at the Browns and has caught the eye in practice sessions. From the training camps, he has the highest pass completion percentage of the 4 quarterbacks with 77% success. Sanders was 41 of 55 with 9 touchdowns, the most, and 1 interception through OTAs and minicamp. However, insiders say Kevin Stefanski is impressed with Gabriel early on, with the 3rd round pick quickly learning the Browns' offensive strategies. That is a worrying development for Sanders, with ESPN's Jeremy Fowler issuing a concerning update. He said on NBA Live, Browns coaches did not ask Sanders to integrate the same volume of playbook during minicamp as his counterparts. Fowler added that Sanders did not receive any first-team reps throughout Browns camp, so the level of competition he faced was significantly lower than the 3 other quarterbacks. But based on that information, Shedeur Sanders, for whatever reason, is not getting these reps. A lot of this speculation is due to his learning of the playbook. With that, he's not receiving the same level of competition as his counterparts. These are the facts. Because I want people to really understand what they're saying. Essentially, what people are saying, Jay, is that the situation involving Shedeur Sanders is either collusion, sabotage, or hate. So basically what people are trying to say is that a team that has drafted Shedeur Sanders is sabotaging him at the behest of, this is a struggling franchise, a franchise that has been struggling really since Baker Mayfield left. They haven't had a steady quarterback situation. They're looking for a franchise level quarterback. You think that if Shedeur Sanders is out here outperforming Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, and Kenny Pickett, that they're not going to start him? Or they're not going to give him more reps? It doesn't make any fucking sense. Talent in the NFL, and that's why I want people to really acknowledge at this point, there's no agenda against Shedeur Sanders. If teams saw elite traits, he would have been drafted earlier. That's point blank period. Guys like Patrick Mahomes, his dad was a pro athlete. Caleb Williams, his dad was outspoken. Kyler Murray, his father was managing his image. They are going to judge and evaluate the football talent. So this is what I want people to understand. If you're not as talented as you think that you are, you have to make up with it with intangibles. Knowledge of the playbook, leadership, humility, IQ. These are the things that teams are looking for, because at this point, if you're getting drafted in the 5th round, if you're getting drafted from the 3rd round and later, you're not a starting quarterback. The league is evaluating you as a backup level quarterback. So that's how they're evaluating Shedeur Sanders. He's going to have to do a whole lot more than completing 70% of his passes, where we don't have context on any of these passes, and he's playing against lesser competition. What we're really going to see is with the preseason play. We're not going to see it with these OTAs and with training camp. We're going to see everything that we need to see with preseason play. Am I saying that Shedeur Sanders is ass? Absolutely not. But am I saying that he's the best thing since sliced bread? Absolutely not. There's not enough data to suggest that. There really isn't. And just looking at some completion percentage is not an adequate way to define how good somebody is in comparison to other people that are facing better competition. It's not. It's just people on Twitter and social media that don't really know football, they don't really know anything about sports, and don't know anything about competition, that are putting their opinion and showing their ass. Because really, that's what it is. It's people just showcasing their emotion because they like Shedeur Sanders or they love Deion Sanders. No, this is fucking athletics, ladies and gentlemen. Competition in the NFL. These are the best athletes in the world. NFL teams want to win. They want to sell. Because think about it. If it was about popularity, because that's what people want to turn this into. If it was about popularity, the Cleveland Browns would definitely have Shedeur Sanders starting. He's the most popular player on that team right now. Fact or fiction? It's facts. So if they really wanted to sell and make money because of headlines, they would start him. They're not, because they probably just haven't seen enough. If you're seeing somebody on a day-to-day basis, and that's what I want all people to do, and I'm going to conclude right here. If you guys think that Shedeur Sanders should be starting, if there's something weird going on with them, tell us what it is. Is it sabotage? Is it collusion? Is it hate? By golly, is it racism? I need y'all to tell me, instead of saying, oh man, he's completing all these passes. What's really going on? You clearly have some type of agenda that you want to push. Push it. If not, calmly shut the fuck up and let us see the game and let us see the tape on Friday.
Yeah, man. This whole Brown situation it has been interesting, I'm not gonna lie. Definitely scrolling through Twitter. Plenty of times I've seen, one of the Browns media outlets, when they post like the 4 QBs, they'll post like their stats. And like Bardo was saying, we're usually seeing Shedeur have a pretty high completion rate. And, Shedeur, he's been playing with the second unit. I think one thing, throughout this offseason that I've been kind of interested about was the fact that Shedeur was the only quarterback to not get any first team reps. Because, I get it. You're drafted below the 3rd round. You're more than likely expected to be, backup, and you're going to have to work a long, hard way to, to climb up the scales. I definitely would like to see Shedeur, with the first rep, like just to see him out, just to throw him out there, because during draft day, when the GM was kind of talking to, Shedeur, he was just making it clear, like, you in the NFL now, basically saying, this isn't college, you're not with your pops, you're going to have to work for it, and it's got to be earned. So I was like, okay. I get that y'all trying to make it clear that, he's not finna get any handouts, which, is understandable. I'm pretty sure everybody expected that. But, I was just expecting, a little bit of first team reps because, if he's doing what he's supposed to do against the second team, I was kind of expecting the coaches might be like, oh, okay, well, let's just throw him out there with the first team reps for, one day just to see how well he does. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. But, like I said, it's kind of expected. It definitely seems like they're just waiting to see how he does, in the preseason. And I think that'll be a hard determining factor to see, if he kind of gets an edge over Dylan Gabriel, but also kind of expecting, Dylan Gabriel to have, I guess, the better IQ or figuring out the playbook, quicker than Shedeur. Kind of makes sense. Dylan Gabriel has 2 more years ahead of Shedeur as far as, knowledge, because, Dylan Gabriel, he's played, what, 6 seasons? Yeah. And to Shedeur's 4 in college. So I am kind of expecting Dylan Gabriel to hop in and, kind of understand the playbook quicker. But I'm not expecting Shedeur to not play at all throughout this season. I honestly think Shedeur more than likely will finish, out this Brown season, because I think everybody kind of knows that, Joe Flacco, he's not going to be a starter throughout this entire season. Like, Joe Flacco's 40. He wasn't looking sharp last season. And yeah, even though he helped that Browns team get to a 12-5 record, he shit the bed in that playoff game. So I know the Browns are kind of just like, okay, we got him. We've had him before. We've seen what we know what he does. We've seen what he looks like. So we're just gonna have him to start off the season. And Kenny Pickett, I don't think I'm too bright on Kenny Pickett either. Like, I think they kind of just sign him to see what he does on his team. So I definitely think, Dylan Gabriel, he'll get his shot, and Shedeur as well. I'm in agreement with Bardo. Like, if there is an agenda, with the whole Shedeur thing, I would love to know it, because clearly we don't have all the information that these insiders have and, the actual professionals have to know, like, why, Shedeur got drafted late, and why Shedeur isn't getting first team reps, and why Shedeur is kind of, far behind the others. So this is something that'll take some time, obviously. I know a lot of folks, are kind of pointing towards the racism thing, because, you kind of look at the Eli Manning situation where, he made it clear that he didn't want to go to a certain team. He was like, okay, I want to be drafted by the Giants. Don't want to be drafted by the Chargers. And his father is the one that made that clear. And he was like, okay. So I guess a lot of people were kind of pointing towards that, when Dion was kind of talking about, where Shedeur wanted to go. It is what it is. The draft happened. A lot of people were definitely in shock with how far he dropped. But like I said, it must be something that, they're seeing that we don't know about. And will we ever find out? I don't know. I would kind of like to. But as far as the preseason, I'm hoping for, good things to come from Shedeur. Hopefully, he does really well, because I think, like I said, I think this preseason, these games will kind of determine the organization, what they're going to do with Shedeur as far as this season. Because, the owner did make it clear. He was like, this wasn't my pick. I didn't want to draft Shedeur. That was all on GM. So, like I said, like the GM said, it's earned. That's probably a big reason why he said, you got to earn this, because the owner, he really don't want you here. But, as far as now, he's done a good job, all that cockiness stuff that everybody, was painting him out to be and talking about, he hasn't done none of that. Anytime, something goes on in the community, he's doing that. And we don't hear him, bragging about this and that. And, if I had these reps, this and that, he's just, ducking his head down, doing his job, going through training camp. And now he's getting prepared for the preseason game. So, interested to see Shedeur's journey. And I can't wait for Friday, man. Football back, baby.
Just go back to Shedeur Sanders. It's like, first of all, how good do people think that he is? Because whatever you want to say, if you want to say that the NFL is against Shedeur Sanders, they're colluding against the Sanders family or whatever, all that absurd amount of hate that people think the NFL has to Shedeur Sanders, the media has the same level of love and admiration for him, because we're not talking about Cam Ward. We're not talking about anybody in the first round. All we're talking about every single day within this draft class is Shedeur Sanders. You take the good with the bad, Because if this was another 5th round pick, not only would we not be talking about him, they wouldn't even probably be getting any reps. Honestly, getting as many reps as he's getting. So starting in a preseason game, and a lot of that is attributed to guys being hurt. So whether we would like it or not, you gotta take in all of the information, all of the data that is available. And that's my problem with this convo. I agree with Jay. I would love to see Shedeur Sanders prove it to us. Either prove to us that he's good to great, or prove to us that he's average, or prove to us that he's bad. I feel like we, as people that have watched football, especially college, and everything that he was projected to be, we should see that. We need to see that in order to have some type of conclusion for this player. But we also can acknowledge that if this was anybody else that got drafted in this position, we wouldn't be talking about him. We just wouldn't. What works for you in a negative way works for you in a positive way. Because I've seen nobody on television saying, oh man, Shedeur Sanders, he doesn't deserve an opportunity. Stats are, misleading. I haven't seen nobody say that. Everybody's been saying how this guy's gotten done dirty. And you can make that argument that he has. But the league clearly doesn't think that he's good enough. And that's really the only combo. When you're not talented enough, you have to make up in the other attributes. Because another thing that niggas are not talking about are all of those reports during the pre-draft interview. Pre-draft interviews coming in there allegedly. These are alleged. But my question to people would be, so they're just making all this shit up? That he's coming into the pre-draft interview not prepared? They're asking him to, do things on the chalkboard. He's getting irritated and frustrated when he gets things incorrect. And he's telling people, maybe I'm not a fit for you. FaceTiming niggas when he's in an interview. These are things that people are not talking about. So that's why I'm saying, if you think that those things are not true, then essentially you're saying that reporters are lying, the NFL scouts are lying, the executives are lying. So then we need to have a bigger argument. But no, niggas want to keep it about football. Can't have it both ways. So that's my conversation. That's going to be my question for all the people that are going to be in the comments that are going to have something against what I'm saying. And I don't really care. I just want people to provide the logic. Because like I said, I can give a damn if Shedeur Sanders is good. I give a damn if he's bad. I always want brothers to be successful, but it doesn't matter to me because Shedeur Sanders is a celebrity. If Shedeur Sanders doesn't pan out in the NFL, he'll be okay. Meanwhile, you got other niggas that if they don't pan out in the NFL, it's going to have to pick up a 9-to-5 or something. I kind of have a hard feeling bad for niggas like Shedeur Sanders, feeling bad for like guys like Bronny James. I kind of put them in similar categories from the standpoint of they have a lot of money. They come from families that have a lot of money. All they send for their whole lives is money, is access. The fact that you have all those resources at the table and you're going to have all the support because your fathers are very, very influential in the media space. You have everything that you need. So you also need the league to kiss your ass? Absolutely not. So as Jay said, let's see what happens on Friday. Me, depending on the results, unless he's bad, I'm going to take it with a grain of salt. Because as of now, I evaluate Shedeur Sanders as a fifth round pick. I'm not looking at him as those prognostications that we had before pre-draft. I'm evaluating him based on what he is. So if he's solid, if he's adequate, I'm going to give him props. Because for a 5th round pick to come into a preseason game and be adequate and start without having those requisite reps, we would have to give him credit for that. But all of this other bullshit of him being treated unfairly, I'm not trying to hear that shit at all, bro. I'm really, really sorry. Now, if this was a guy that didn't come from a lot of money, yeah, I could feel bad for him. But Shedeur Sanders was a millionaire before he got to college. He was a millionaire with all that NIL money. He's a millionaire now. Why am I feeling sorry for him? I can't do it. That's just me.